everybody, Dana Lewin here again with more Tuesday tips for leaders of volunteers, and kind of continuing the Office Politics 101 theme that we started last week with the topic of volunteers versus staff and that kind of toxic culture that can occur. This week talking about peer-to-peer conflicts or conflicts with coworkers, just because that has another layer to it. HR might get involved. It can have everything to do with a hostile work environment, or you wanting to quit your job, or somebody getting fired from a job. So the stakes are a little bit different in a coworker personality conflict or beef, or however you want to frame that. Now, I have found that as a leader of volunteers, and that this theme of trust is going to come up a lot, but the currency that we deal with is trust and relationship building. So when there's a breakdown of a relationship between you and another staff member, whether that's a direct peer that's equal to you, or even somebody who is above you within your department, or I've also seen a lot of problems stemming from department heads having kind of a weird personality conflict or personal beef, or being territorial about stuff between departments that then rains down like, thunder and lightning from the sky to volunteer services and impacts the work that you're doing in a negative way. It kind of blocks being successful at fulfilling the cause or the mission. So what I've also discovered over the years is that most personal problems, conflicts with coworkers, are a miscommunication or a misunderstanding that has spiraled into drama. And that can be that people have very different communication styles. Like someone is very analytical and direct, and they don't want a lot of flowery language or small talk or a whole narrative story to learn about something or to understand an issue. And the other person communicating is more emotionally driven, emotive, and wants to kind of get more complicated details and nuance into the story than just kind of facts and numbers. And that's usually the core of a conflict, is a different communication style or oil and water personalities. And that can lead to the second part of the layer of conflict that's most common, which is there's just a buildup of mistrust, resentment, feeling disrespected, and it starts to get emotional and personal, which is never good. So to avoid being drawn into this kind of drama vortex, check amongst yourselves. How are you participating in the problem, or how are you helping to solve it? And do you have to talk to a supervisor or your boss or executive leadership to help solve it? Do you have to go to HR? Is this crossing an HR line in behavior, or someone's accusing you of crossing an HR line in behavior for an interpersonal conflict with a coworker? And these can be quite serious. So again, just kind of dealing with understanding the problem, understanding the source. And then the third step, the third part of this Tuesday tip, after, what is it a personality problem? Is it resentful, hurt feelings that have built up, a grudge that's built up? And the third kind of idea around solving these coworker conflicts is knowing yourself and how you react to stuff, and then choosing as much as you can to address the problem from an emotionally neutral and purely factual basis. And I really recommend approaching the person with a mediator or a neutral party, not necessarily one of your bosses, because that can add a different bad dynamic or uncomfortable dynamic if a boss is there. But see if you can have, a little bit of a conversation with a person and just kind of lay out the facts without getting reactive to whatever their emotional states are, and just kind of note your own emotional states. And I'm going to link another little card to a video I've done about having tough talks and kind of how to physically and mentally, emotionally prepare yourself to have challenging conversations. Not everybody enjoys having conflict or conversation. Some people are better at resolving it than others. And so that's a pretty common thing of just wanting to avoid conflict and not say anything, but that actually makes that distrust and those grudges and that resentment and those hurt feelings build up layers and layers and layers until it can be really, really difficult to untangle and solve and get to a point where you can at least, you don't have to like each other or be best friends or be work buddies, but at least have enough mutual respect and understanding of your roles that contribute to the success of the mission of your agency. So the solution to all of that, once you've kind of identified, is it a personal problem? Is it a communication problem? Is it there was an incident years ago and they blame me for it, or they blame volunteer services for it and they're taking it out on you. All of that can be a factor, but the solve is to document everything, at least for yourself. And then if you have to, if there is an involvement with HR or other departments, you've got a timeline of, this person was disrespectful to me on this day, or they complained about this, or they're not fulfilling this part of their job working with my department or working with volunteers. How can we solve that? But if you approach the situation from an emotionally neutral and, hey, not a blame game, let's just solve the problem and figure out how we can work better together, that automatically starts to diffuse some of that emotional energy that's attached to it. I also want to acknowledge that sometimes people are just jerks. And jerk is not a protected class. That's another video I have that you can watch after this one. So if someone is just a toxic person and a jerk, or they just lack self-awareness, or they're going through extra stress or having a mental health crisis, all of that's above your pay grade. But it's important to understand where someone's coming from and if they can be reached. And some people just are very, very negative and toxic, and that's their life pattern, and you can't break them out of it. But at least identifying that can help you understand if you can just talk to the person one-on-one, if you need to have kind of a mediated conversation with a fairly neutral third party, another coworker, or even someone from outside of the agency, and if it needs to go to an HR level of documentation, or if you need or want to leave this position because it's just going to be so dysfunctional that you got to bail out of there, then that's good to identify as well. But ideally, you can work towards some kind of emotionally neutral, factual plan of action with the person of, okay, you're not using the volunteer calendar correctly, or can you please try to be more respectful to our volunteers and go through standards of conduct. Whatever you think that the slight or the violation or the problem is, just address it as factually as possible, as emotionally neutral as possible, and see how you can resolve solutions from there. If you also practice active listening, whether you're one-on-one with that person and recording conversation or each taking notes, make sure that you agree on some shared goals, even if that shared goal is, I'm gonna back away from your stuff slowly and you're gonna back away from my stuff slowly, and we're just gonna live and let live and do our thing. That's fine. But if you have to work very closely with them for volunteer engagement, outreach, their department works closely with volunteers, then it's really in everybody's best interest to create that timeline of incidents so that, and it's not ever, it takes two to tango. So look at how you're contributing to it as well, and take ownership of that and accountability. But then just agree on these are some neutral goals, how we can work better together for the sake of the agency and the entire team. And if someone can't at least come to that kind of agreement, and you have a problem with them, or it's a problem with the upper bosses, then that starts to get into, who can we go to that is within the chain of command, the hierarchy, the organizational chart of the agency, who can help resolve this problem if it's interfering with day-to-day stuff. You can also make the conscious decision to not sweat the small stuff, that maybe they are just like a petty passive-aggressive person and that's how they've been their whole lives and you can never change them. But you don't have to buy into that. Again, you can step away from kind of that black hole of a drama vortex, and you can choose how you react to things. So I hope that these have been helpful Tuesday tips and kind of office politics 101. And it's also important to keep in mind that, HR departments vary from agency to agency, and HR's core job is to protect the agency, not necessarily individual workers, although some cultures are better than others, some HR directors are better at that than others. But just, keep in mind what structures of safety nets or conflict resolution or solutions exist within your agency. And if they don't have good structures for that, maybe that's time to see if if the other person can move on, or you can move on, or at least you can, again, agree to live and let live and try to do the best you can. So check out all of my Tuesday tips. I have hundreds of videos on this channel that are all free for you to enjoy and learn from each other. So let me know if you have an idea for a Tuesday tips topic, and you're also welcome to submit your own videos on your phones or your video cameras of what you want to talk about. And if you've got some Tuesday tips to offer, let me know in the comments below and get in touch with me directly. So I hope you have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you next time.